Hello. So, this is going to be the big one. Planning to do a tier list for all the Jokers in Balatro. Might as well get started with good enough to build around. I mean, with the Heartstone, if you can get at like a Hanging Chad or a Seltzer, it's going to keep triggering and triggering, and yeah, it's basically on par with the King, but the difference is you've got more chance of getting a flush with 5 than you do with getting 5 Kings. So that leads me to this guy. I'm just going to put him in just good. He's good, but he's not amazing. Instant pick. If you're going to copy another card, you're going to have to put Blueprint in there as well. I mean, those two, as soon as you see them, you buy them, and then you can... So we start off building in one direction. These things are just going to amplify it to the next level. Put DNA in just good, because it is situational. It's a bit of a noob trap, because you think you're copying cards all the time, it's fantastic. Copy your strongest card. But if you're taking that at the beginning of the game, and you don't have sufficient chips or mult, then it can catch you out very quickly. Now, next one, Bootstraps. I'd say it's just good. Of course, when you get to later levels and you've already got your economy on, like, sorted, then this thing can go astronomical. It can go like plus 100 mult. But you have to get there first before it becomes good. Otherwise, you'll be around 15-20 mult at the most. So if you look at it that way, it's comparable to a lot of the other basic cards. Now, astronomer, I forget the name of it, but essentially whenever you take a planet card, it adds plus 0.1 mult, and if you get that at the start of the game, then you're just going to be taking planet cards for the whole thing. I've seen this thing get up to times 8 mult, so it's definitely worth picking up and good enough to build around. Now, Blackboard next. I'd say it's good enough to build around. It's on the lower end though, because you're only going to get 3x mult at the most, but it is quite achievable, especially if you have something like the checkered deck, and you can start filtering out the hearts. Once you've got that, you'll know what you're aiming for. Fibonacci. I'd say it's one of the better cards, but it's not amazing, because plus 8 mult is great, but it just almost feels like it's a lot of a workaround. But if you don't have any scaling mult to go with it, then it can just stagnate. It'll be great at the beginning, but as soon as you hit the later levels, should we put it down to only good before anti-5? No, I think it's better than that. I wouldn't say you build around it, but it's better than just good. Gross Michelle, and I'll put the plantain just beside it, because if you've not tried it before, you get plus 15 mult, but you've got a 1 in 4 chance or 1 in 5 chance of it destroying itself, which is a good thing, because once it destroys itself, you unlock the chance of getting a plantain, which is technically a common card, but it gives you times 3 mult, and you've got a 1 in 1,000 chance of it breaking. And even with Oops All Sixes, it's still, the odds are stacked against it. I've never had one break on me, so if that does happen, that's just bad luck. Now, Lucky Cat, build around it. Let me just get him up here. I'd say it's better than Blackboard, but not as good as Astrology. We'll put Heartstone there. So Lucky Cat, every time you trigger a lucky card, it gives 0.25 mult. And when you start getting things like Hack, Red Seals, when you start getting things that'll play cards more than once, Hanging Chad as well, then this thing can really get up there in numbers. The longer you have it, the better it is. Now, driving license. For a rare card, the barrier of entry is really high, and once you get to the point where you've got 18 or 16 modified cards, you're normally looking for something better than 3x mult. So I'd take it if it's available and I've got a free slot, but I wouldn't go out my way to build around it. So I'd say it's solid, it's up there. Just put DNA down the bottom. Now, bank card. My initial reaction is avoid, but it does have certain niche times when it is you can take advantage of it. Like if you've got a blueprint, for example, and a bank card, then take that bank card, buy the blueprint, just sell the card straight away. It's not something I'd want to have around for a long time. Now, burnt joker, is it good enough to build around? Yes, but it doesn't give you direct mult. It just indirectly upgrades the cards. So is it just good, or is it good enough to build around? It's a tough one. I'll leave it at the bottom there, but it might be subject to change. Now, burglar, you can build around that, no problem. Great card. And it's not just about giving you extra hands to have opportunities to make more chips. It also gives you the opportunity to make more money. So if you get this early on, it's both an econ joker and a way to improve your score as well. So it's a win-win. Card sharp. Just good. I mean, it does have a barrier of entry for each round, and 3x is okay, so you've got to put it around here. We'll put it next to driver's license because, again, it's a 3x rare card. Oh no, it's uncommon. That makes it a bit better, actually, because you've got more chance of finding it. But still, you've got to make sure you've got love hands, and you can, or you're willing to sacrifice a hand just to get this online. This is another trap. It's only good after ante 4 on the condition that you've got a lot of tarot cards already. I think it's just okay-ish. And to be honest with you, I think we should put just okay cards down here. Bull I'm going to put next to bootstraps just because it's the same thing but with chips. Knife, ceremonial dagger is good enough to build around, I'd say. It is money hungry. It's very intensive on your economy. But if you've got a good economy, if you've got like riffraff or you've got nest egg, then you've got a good chance of building this one up high. Speaking of which, nest egg there. It's normally money positive. It does take a joker slot for the 2 or 3 antes that you've got it, but it can build up. It can help other cards, but I wouldn't take it on the pretense you might get another card that interacts with it. Good enough to build around for hanging Chad, triggering a card 3 times. Like I've said before, if you've got things like Bloodstone, if you've got Lucky Cat, it's an essential card. This is a good enough to build around pick, but it's only in niche cases. If you've got a way of getting a lot of planets or tarot cards, and you can afford to get rid of some of your multiplier jokers for mult, then you might be able to work around it, but it's a bit awkward. It's good at the start. It gets less good as the game goes on and you get more jokers you want to put into your deck. Sock and Bustin. Is Sock and Buskin better than Hanging Chad? It does re-trigger potentially 5 cards instead of 1 card 3 times. I'd say it's on par. It's got its uses, but you've got more chance of having Hanging Chad trigger every time, whereas this will only trigger certain times. We'll tell you what, I'll put Hack in front of it. I think Hack has more chances of it triggering off, and you've got different builds you can go around for doing that. Invisible Joker. Instant pick, but it's at the low end of instant pick because essentially it's doing the same job as the first 2, but you have to wait 2 rounds, so that's kind of, it puts you at a handicap before you can take best use of it. Now, good enough to build around, yes, but it's on the lower end. If anything, we should move these guys up. So this guy, every time you cycle your cards, you get +2 mult. So it is something you can use. It's a bit better than the Tarot Joker, because you're more likely to be cycling around it at a later game. But when you first, like, if you get it at the beginning, it might not come online until after Ante 5. Photograph, there's the whole meme of photo chad. It's like one of the best ways to play the game. You're going to get the most points, because if you're playing a face card 3 times in a row and it's doing 2x each time, that's what, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256. You can extrapolate it from there, but it's a good card. And I'm surprised it's not uncommon or rare. Now, Monolith, only good after Ante 4. You can take an early Monolith and that'll give you direction to aim towards, but usually if you've got something, for example, spare trousers, and you've been working on 2-pair the whole game, and Monolith comes around Ante 7, it's an instant pick, because you've already built up your accumulative benefits, and this thing's just going to shoot you to the moon. But before that, the first couple of antes, it's just going to be hanging around, taking up space. Now, Oops All Sixes, situational. I'm going to put it in the just good, because it's not amazing. But if you've got something that works with Oops All Sixes, like a lucky card, like lucky cards, there's plenty of other examples. It can help exacerbate things, but it's not good on itself. What have we got here? Scary Face, good before Ante 5. A lot of the chip cards are probably going to go in this. So we're going to put this guy up here. Shouldn't be down there. A lot of like Scary Face, for example, you're getting chips, but the chips are going to become less and less relevant the more planet cards you get, and the better your deck becomes. Ariodolia, there's like a niche support case for it. I don't know if it's just good or it's okay-ish, but because it's got such limited interaction and it is taking up a Joker slot, it's not an instant pick. It's not like something you get excited about. But if you've already got things like a Golden Mask and Vampire, for example, it's gonna basically change the whole deck. But it does feel like a utility Joker. It's not a Joker you use as a pillar. Now, Tiki Head. It's good enough to build around? Not really, because it's good late game once you've already sorted your deck out. If your deck's not sorted, you've got like 1 in 52 chance of it triggering. So, only good after Ante 4 I'm going to put there. Because hopefully by that time you've got a good deck set up and this is going to make it even better. Now I can see another noob trap here, Stop the Bus. Scaling's good. It matches with every hand, but unless you're playing very specific decks or you've already skewed your deck to like a hack play, this thing is just going to be okay. It can be built up, but there are easier ways to build up more mult, and the fact that you can lose it at any point and it's not permanent, it's too risky. I wouldn't put it in a void, but I wouldn't instant pick it. Now, just good. I'm going to put Green Joker here because the idea of losing all your discards or getting penalized for discarding is not as bad as losing everything just for playing a face card. You're only penalized a little bit. One of the best econ jokers, I'd say, is Mail-in Rebate. You're going to get 5 gold for every time you discard something specific. I think it's unparalleled when it comes to econ. There's few things that can get better. Now, this is just a personal preference. People are going to disagree. It's not that powerful, but for me, it's an instant pick. Actually, do you know what? I'm going to put it only good before Ante 5. Non-derogatory. Because if you get it later on, it's too late to start building around. But if you get it early, it's like game defining. Plus, if you get it early, you get 100 mult on it, and then you pivot to something else, it's still going to stay as 100. It's not going to punish you for doing something else. That's why it's got good synergy with Monolith. I'd say trading cards, good utility, but not good by itself. It's deck fixing, but it doesn't add to your score. In a roundabout way it can, because you've got more chance of drawing the cards you're looking for. It has got a little bit of econ, but that's not the reason you'd pick it. If you're picking trading card for the 3 gold it gives you, you've got your priorities in the wrong places. Avoid trap once every 6 turns. I mean, the payoff's massive, but the work and effort is not worth it. Avoid, usually you don't want to be skipping, you don't want to be taking tags. So unless you've got something specific, I mean, I suppose if you get it on a niche case like ante 1 or 2, and you've also got a skip for $25 tag, then you can take it and sell it. But generally speaking, it's not got money uses. Okayish. If you play 3 or less cards, you're going to get plus 20 mult. It's going to get outskilled quickly, and it works in certain builds, but not all builds. Now, what have we got next? Plant Pop. I'd put it in Avoid because it's, again, it's another one of those cards that's hard to trigger. It's just okayish. So Raised Fist, it'll give you... It'll look at your cards in hand, pick the lowest value one, and then times it by 2, and that's how much mult you get. So potentially 22 mult at the most, but 9 times out of 10 you're going to get like 4, 6, 8 mult. It is good, but it's not amazing. It's okayish. Delayed Gratification. It's a good econ joker. It's not amazing, but it's good. I'll give it credit where it's due. It can come in use, especially when you pair it up with the green joker, because you're not going to be using discards anyway. So I'll just put it there comfortably. Maybe move this guy up a bit. Now, Erosion. In theory, it's good. In practice, you've got to have your deck fixed, and you've got to have ways of getting rid of cards to justify it. But even if you've got a slim deck of like 20, 30 cards, it's giving you a lot of mult, but it's not taking you to the next level. I'm just going to put it in the good after ante 4, providing you've got your deck fixed already. Dawn is just okayish, or Dusk, whichever one you call it. Essentially, that last hand you play, it'll re-trigger everything. I would put it in just good, but generally you want to be winning before your last hand. So you can, if you're desperate and you've only got one hand, fair enough. Only good before ante 5, To the Moon. You're going to be earning gold, and then that upgrades every time you beat a boss. So if you get it at the beginning, it can ramp up to give you lots of gold, but I wouldn't pick it after ante 5. Now, Campfire. It's good enough to build around, but it's not that good. With Campfire, the way it works is every time you sell something, it adds plus mult. Sounds great. The problem is it resets after every boss, so the fact that it resets, it's too much of a penalty to put it in the instant pick category, or the good enough to build around. Now, Stuntman. Only good before ante 5, or just good? I'd say it's good enough to build around. If you can get a high card run with Stuntman, 250 coins? 250 chips is worth taking home. Again, just good. In econ, whenever you play a face card, you got 1 in 2 chance of getting some gold. Let me get the parking in there as well, because they're kind of two sides of the same coin. Reserved parking is every time you play a hand, if you've got a face card in your hand, then you've got a chance of getting gold. Now, Satellite, it's only good after ante 4. As an econ joker, if you've already got some planets under your belt and you need money, you can take it. But if you've got less than 4 planets, then you might as well try and just go for the gold joker. Now, vampire, we're going to put that on good enough to build around. I'm going to put it up here with the burnt joker, I'd say. Vampire is when you've got cards that are modified, takes modification off. In exchange, you get plus mult. So it is a scaling card, and it relies on you being eco-intensive and getting lots of modified cards. Doesn't work with seals, just with luckies and mults and chips and what's the other one? Glass. Own wild cards, but no one cares about wild cards. Now, another card that relies on you having lots of discards. I'm going to put it in okay-ish, because it just gives you chips, gives you a big chunk of chips, but nothing to write home about. And let's be honest, later in the run, it's not going to be helpful. It's just going to be a bit of a burden, because you could be using it for something else. Now, let's move on to Gold Mask. Now, I'm going to put that next to Vampire. As an Econ Joker, it's pretty good. Takes a while to build up, and you need a lot of face cards, but if you combine that with Vampire, you've basically got a way to potentially, if the deck is fixed, you've got a way to get like +1 mult every game, like every round, which is crazy. So it's situational. Okay, red card. Good enough to build around. Let me explain. So with red card, whenever you skip a pack, you get +3 mult. So technically it's better than most of the planet cards, because you're not getting chips, but you are getting more mult than you would get from just normally doing it. The downside is it takes up a joker slot instead of adding outside of the joker slots. So it can get up to the hundreds with multiplications, but it's not 100% reliable, and it is eco-intensive. So I'm just going to put it next to Nest Egg. Yeah, it looks good around there. Madness, I'd say avoid, because I've tried to play around Madness. I've gotten it early before, and it does build up well, but the problem is, unless you've got Eternal Jokers, Infinite Jokers, whatever you want to call them, it's going to keep munching away at your normal Jokers. And the benefit is good, but if you don't have a reliable way of getting a lot of planets or a lot of tarot or another way to boost up your deck, then it can be a burden. So I'm going to go good after Ante 4, because if you've already got a good deck or you've got a couple of infinites, then this is the way to go. Now, next one. Vagabond. It's good at the beginning, but if you've got to Ante 8 and you've still got Vagabond, the payout of getting a tarot card is good, but it's not worth the sacrifice of having a strong economy and allowing you to reroll to get better jokers. Now, Seltzer can be amazing in the right builds, but it is just a utility. It only boosts what you already have. It doesn't actively add a lot itself. But yeah, if you've got a Lucky Cat, if you've got a Photo Chad on the go, then Seltzer's going to boost it even more. Now, this is a controversial pick. I'd say that's good enough to build around. Secret Passage, I think it's called, Alleyway. But essentially, it allows you to have gaps in your straights. So you can, instead of going ace 2, 3, 4, 5, you can go ace 2, 4, 5, 6. And you can have gaps on gaps on gaps. So for example, ace 3, 5, 7, 9 is a straight when you've got this card. if you have other cards that are good at giving you more score, this can enable a straight deck, but if you don't have that already, then it can be a bit of a niche pick. You can build around it, but it's not a mind-blowingly good card. Now, arrowheads. Would you build around it? I mean, the most you're going to get on a vanilla hand is 5, so that's 250. So that's on par with Stuntman. But the other side of it is you need to fix your deck, you need to have the right colour, and it does trigger multiple times with Hack, with Photochard, with Sock and Buskin, so it can be there. I'm just going to move Seltzer up beside its buddies, because the re-trigger can be really powerful. I'd say that's a trap, because yes, you can get multiple good cards, but if you've already got good cards, you want more good cards to go with it. You don't want to take up a Joker slot with the opportunity to maybe potentially get something down the line. You'd rather have something right now. Wee Joker, build around that, definitely. Let's put that on top. Again, Wee Joker, if you play 2s, you get +8 chips. So if you play 2s and you've got Hack, and you've got like, I don't know, 5 of a kind, that's potentially 80 chips from one hand, cumulative. It can get up to absurd levels, so if you get it early, build on it. If you get it later, you can still pick it up and build on it. Now, next one, Astronaut. That is good enough to build around. I mean, yeah, it works well, synergizes with Oops All Sixes, if you've got your blueprint. Is it better than Burning Joker? No, because it's not as reliable, but it's still powerful enough to be above just good. Now, next one we're looking at. Let's get some of the econ on the go. So, to-do list. It's only okay-ish because it gives you good money, but it's very situational. It's going to end up giving you straight flushes when all you can do is do 3 of a kind. And if you've not decided on what type of hand you're aiming towards, it can be useful. But if you've set in one path and it's asking you to go in different ways every time, the risk is too much. Now, the reroll Joker. The trick with that is if you've got a spare slot, it's normally cheaper to buy this and reroll than it is to just reroll by itself. So a lot of times you'll buy it in the shop, use it, and then sell it if something better is there. So I'd pick it every time if I've got the space, because it's a free reroll. At worst, it's free reroll, but at best, you're using it a few times. Now, Riff Raff. Is it good enough to build around? I'd put it only good before Ante 5. Because it's good, but it's only common Jokers. Like, if you've got 2 spaces, it'll spawn 2 Jokers for you. Common Jokers. So it'll be good finding a way around, like, trying to guide where you want to go, but by itself, it's just okay. Now, this one, pre-nerf, was fantastic. Square Joker. Now, it's only okay-ish, because the reduced amount of chips you get every time you have 4 cards in your hand. So, if you compare it, I think it's like half the level of Wee Joker. And it'll only trigger once a hand, whereas Wee Joker can trigger multiple times a hand. So that's why I'm just going to put it in okay-ish. Square Joker, just okay. Now, that's a trap. The Psychic, whatever it's called. With this card, every time you play a 6 by itself as your first hand, it's going to destroy the card and give you a free Spectral card. Spectral cards are great. Getting rid of cards is great, but once you've used it twice, then the chance of getting another 6 in your hand is astronomically low. So it wouldn't be my first pick. I'm just going to put it in only good before ante 5. Because usually you can fix your deck, use it a couple of times and get rid of it, and then get something more powerful. That'll add to your score. Now, all these jokers I'm going to put at the same time. So let me just get set up. Only good before ante 5. So all the suit jokers that give you +3 whenever you use a specific suit. They're only good, and the reason for this is because the max you can get is +15 mult, unless you're using unless you're using Hanging Chad, Sock and Buskin, Seltzer, or Red Seal. They're just okay, they're not amazing. But if you're needing malt to start you off, or a direction to go in, then they're fine flavours. It wouldn't be an instant pick, but they're good. I'll give them the credit. Now, as econ jokers go, it's just okayish. If you have Ceremonial Dagger, or if you have the Pirate one, which we've not covered yet, it works. But essentially what this does is, every round it adds a gold onto the sell value of all your cards. So it works with like 2, maybe 3 other jokers. But generally speaking, it's just okay. Really good before ante 5. Gold Joker gives you +4 gold every round. You know, it's very simple. Can be powerful when you're just starting to get your economy on the go, but if you pick this up in ante 4, it's good. Ante 7, not so good. Cloud 9, on the other hand, it's the same as Gold Joker, but you could potentially get more than 4 9s in your deck. So it has opportunity for growth. It's niche, but it's better technically than gold. Now, for a rare joker, I'd say baseball card's just good. With this joker, every time you have an uncommon card, an uncommon joker card, it gives you plus 0.5. So it's kind of around the same as King, score-wise, but at the same time, if you've only got 4 uncommon jokers and this, then that's a very niche case. Usually you've got a common one or a couple of rares, depending on how good you're doing. So this might trigger 2 or 3 times at the most, unless you've still got lots of negatives. But if you're at the point where you've got lots of negative jokers, then you're already winning, and this is just going to win more. Oh, I'm doing a lot of talking here. Right. Jimbo. I'm going to give him the just good, because everybody thinks Jimbo, it's only +4 mult, it's rubbish, but it's cheap. So if you get this ante 1, ante 2, and you've got a spare slot, then you're saving money that can go towards your interest, and you've still got +4 mult. How about this? I'll put him at the top of only good before ante 5. And I'm just going to move this guy up here. The spare trousers. So Jimbo is a slept-on card. It's the first card you get, and you think, oh, it's a tutorial card. It's not really that good. It's cheap. Pick it up. Try it. What's the worst that could happen? Now, base card. It's just good. You can get more mult than the basic flavors by using the face card, but you're only going to get 25 mult at the most. No, only good before ante 5. Yeah. Popcorn is plus 20 mult, but every time you use it, it's going to go down 4 mult. So it's not every round you play, or not every hand, but it's every round. So it only lasts for 5 rounds, and then it deletes itself. So if you do pick it up, remember to sell it before it becomes invalid. I'm going to put ice cream in the same level but below it, because it's the equivalent of popcorn, but instead of doing malt, it does chips. It lasts a bit longer. You start off with 100 chips, and every time you use it, it's -5 chips. but the need for chips is less and less the further you go. Misprint, it's good, it's bad, it's okay. You can get up to 21 or 22 mult, I believe, but it's just so unreliable that it's good when you need mult at the beginning, but I wouldn't put in a deck that's finishing up ante-8 or higher. The Jimmy Uso Yeet card, you can build around it if you get it early, but if you get this later on, it's not so good. Plus, if you're skipping rewards for gold, you're skipping shops, you're missing out on so much opportunity for the sake of building up this mult. So if you already have a good deck, it can make it better. But I would say it's only good after ante 4 when you've already got something built up. And I'm going to move Madness down to the Void because it is such a tricky card. You'd need to be an expert or fairly confident in playing the game to really utilize it to its best. No, that's trash. I mean, you can look up the guides on how many bosses it actually triggers on, but the fact it doesn't trigger on every boss and it's an econ joker, I mean, who cares? Mr. Bones Wild Ride, it's one of those cards that you don't need it until you really need it. It's kind of like the IT department at work. If the computers are working, then they're not doing much, but as soon as something breaks, it's the first card you need. Essentially, if you lose a round, but you've got over 25% of the chips needed, it'll destroy itself and punt you through to the next round. No bonuses, but at the same time, you're still alive. So it's not an instant pick, but it can be good if you're not confident going into a boss blind. Hiker is very good if you get it early on. It interacts again with recurring cards like your Sock and Buskin and your Hack, and if you're reducing the amount of cards in your deck well and you're focusing on a very specific build, then this can really up the ante, so to speak. What it does is it'll add chips onto a card every time you use the card, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you start at the bottom, it can really build its way up. I mean, eventually by the end you can get something like 100, 120 extra chips on a card, a single card. So yeah, well worth it. Essentially 25 chips a card, recurring. Now, Castle. It's okay-ish. It gives chips when you discard a specific colour, and it is technically accumulative, but it's chips, and by the time you get to the end game, you won't be focusing too much on that. So it kind of needs build up at the beginning, and it's not as useful at the end, so it's kind of just okay-ish. Now, next one. Certificate. I'd put that at just good. If you're fixing your deck up, it can be very helpful at the beginning. I wouldn't keep it forever, because at some point you're going to want to get rid of this for a card that helps with scoring. But if you start off and you don't have any blue seals for planets, or if you don't have any purple seals for tarot cards, make sure you get 1 or 2 in your deck with this and then sell it on and get something else. The most you're going to get on a standard thing is like 5 jokers, so that'll be 15 mult. You might get some negative cards to boost that up, but it's just okay. Now, Hit the Road Jack. It's too tough to build around. You can theoretically build your deck around this, but the barrier of entry is just too much, in my opinion. Now, Runner, we'll put it in good enough to build around. Hiker should be higher up than that. I think Hiker and Runner are two kind of similar things. The difference is Hiker's got more flexibility, whereas Runner you're forced into doing straights. So of course it has synergy with the shortcut card and a couple of others, but generally you'll build your deck around that. It's good for the first 4 blinds, for the first 4 or 5 antes, and then by that point you should have built it up to the point where it's giving you a load of chips. And fun fact, the runner's 345 number on its chest there, that signifies the amount of chips you would get if you managed to trigger it every time on a ante 1 to ante 8 if you pick it up first. So that's kind of like a soft limit. You can get more than that, but you'd need to trigger it more than once per round. Now the steel joker and the stone joker, I'm going to put them in like just good, because you really have to build around them to utilize them. Usually you've got more chances of a steel joker getting in your deck, but the stone jokers, I'm just going to put it in okayish, because I've never had a build that's good when using this card. I mean, stone cards you usually want to avoid unless it's very specific circumstances, like plasma deck for example. So this guy is just good. Every time you do an ante, you'll get a free tarot card, so it can be good to build up your deck, but there's better cards that are going to give you more mults and more advantages. So I'd say it's good at the beginning. We'll put him up here next to Jimbo. I would say avoid this only because it's very difficult to trigger. You have to have a straight that involves an ace, and then you'll get a card as a result of that. But unless you've got a very specific deck, then the chances of getting that are very slim. Now, the lost card, we're going to put it in just good. What this does is with flushes and straights, instead of needing 5 cards, you only need 4 cards. So it's good utility if you've built around it already, but if you're seeing this after floor, I'd say ante 5, it's not really worth it. So how about this? Good before ante 5. No, I forget the name of it. Is it agate? It's good to give you extra chips, but it's not amazing, so we'll put it up there. Essentially, whenever you use a club card, you'll get X amount of chips. I'll have it flashing up on the screen here, but it runs into the same problem as the flavor cards, in that you need a very specific set of circumstances, and the payoff is just okay, it's not amazing. Now, for econ jokers, I'd say this one's pretty good actually. Good enough to build around? Not quite. I'm going to put those 2 there, and I'll put these 2 down here. I mean, they're still really good cards to get. I mean, if you're early in the game and you can start building loads of diamonds in your deck, then essentially you can get like +5 around. And that's a lot of gold, especially early on. But the usefulness kind of tapers off when you're looking for surely boosting score. So we'll leave it in there for now. Now, what's next? Ace is just okayish, so niche. Same with Walkie Talkie, 10-4, good buddy. Those 2 cards, you need an ace, you'll get extra amount of... Actually, do you know what? We're going to put them beside the flavor cards because they kind of do a similar thing, but a little bit extra, because you get chips off them as well. That's just okay. The Luchador, it's just so niche. Basically, when you've got a boss blind, you can sell this card and it disables a boss blind. So it can be useful, but you wouldn't keep it around for more than 1 or 2 rounds. But the chances of getting it at a later thing, then it's quite slim. Tell you what I'm going to do. Good after ante 4, because that's when you get like the violet vessels and stuff like that. So it can be a lifesaver. Now, bean. It increases your hand size, but just like the other foods, it goes down every time you use it. So it's good for like 4 rounds, I'd say. But afterwards you want to sell it, move on to something else, but it can get you through some tight situations, so I'm going to put it in the just good category. Put these guys down here. For the duo, I'm going to put it in just good, and I'll explain why. Same with the trio. These things you don't need to build around, but they are going to give you mult. So the amount of mult you get on the duo is x2, but you've got more chance of it triggering because it's on a 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, 2 pair, full house, technically a flush you could get it on, not a straight. It's got so many chances of it triggering. It's more common than something like the family where you have to get 4 of a kind. So if you've already built around 4 of a kind, great, you'll get 4xx mult. But these other two are kind of more useful in a way because they're less niche. We'll put flush and straight in there as well. And this just re-emphasizes that the straights are more valuable than the flushes. Like initially, flush and straight is quite comparable, but as soon as you start getting the power-ups, the planet cards, the good jokers, the flush is always going to be weaker than the straight because it's easier to get. Merry Andy. Okay-ish. I mean, it can be good, but the disadvantage is not worth it most of the time. Another econ card, you have to discard 3 face cards to get gold. No, I'm going to put it in avoid. Unless you really, really want to go into like a stop the bus route. So next up, pirate. This guy, just good. But you see if you get egg, for example, or the gift basket one here, it can get powerful. Dagger is better because it's 2 times whatever the value of the card is it destroys, but this is just whatever the card's value is, all the jokers added together. So potentially you could be getting your 20s and 30s, but 9 times out of 10 it's just okay. So with this one, I forget the name of, Acrobat. What it does is it gives you mult, but it has to be when you, I believe it's when you've got no discards. So it's niche. It can be helpful, but it's not something that's reliable. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put it at the top of okay-ish. If you can find a reliable way to smash glass, that's one of the best cards you can get for mult. But you need to be built into it already to really take advantage of it. Now, put Pekaro at the top spot as it should be. It's one of the legendary jokers, and at the end of every round, or at the start of the end, you get a negative version of one of the utility cards you've got on hand. So for example, your planet cards or your tarots gives you a negative version of that. So in theory, they can stack up a lot, so you can have like hundreds of negative cards, and with the right advantages, you can use those to trigger off multiplication, mults from there. Now another food stuff, 2x, but it goes down every time by 0.1% every time you use a discard. Or you discard a card, so I mean, it's just okay. It's not amazing. Now, technically this doesn't give you any extra score, but it does make flushes and flush fives, flush houses a lot easier to obtain. So as a utility card, you can build around it. It has good synergy with Blackboard, but if you've got a checkered deck, for example, then it's pretty much worthless. Every other deck, there's niche uses for it. Now the Queen's card. It's just good. It's not amazing, but if you've got a queen in hand, you get like plus something in the teens mult, which is good if you've got a deck full of queens, but if you've not built around that, the chances are it'll trigger once, maybe twice if you're lucky. So you can build around it, but it's not good enough to build around on that level. So we're nearly finished up here. We'll get Merry Andy and Odd Todd. We'll just put them in only good before ante 5. Essentially they give you a chunk of chips or a chunk of malt if you use even or odd cards. So they're okay, but I wouldn't take them after ante 5 because you've already got more ways of getting more cumulative mult at that point. Now, an extra discard, it's okay. I'd take it if there's a spare slot, but I wouldn't be excited to get one. Same with Juggler. Extra hand space. Troubadour is a strange one. I'll put it in just good because it reduces the amount of hands you've got, but it increases the amount of cards in hand significantly. Chico. It disables the boss blind, which is just okay. I don't want to put a legendary Joker in the avoid pile, but it's nearly there, you know. Out of the legendaries, it's not the best. Now, Triboulet. I believe that's the one that gives you 2 times mult if you have a queen or a king in hand, or you play a king or a queen. So you can definitely build around that if you get it. The only problem is it takes a bit of time to get a legendary card. You don't usually get them in the first 1 or 2 antes. So, Now, Canio. I'd say Canio's in just good category, actually. It's not the best in the world, but yeah, it's good. It's good. Now, Splash. That means every card gets triggered. I mean, it's just okay, isn't it? It doesn't really add much. Now, Ancient Joker is... I'm going to put it in Avoid because it's a high skill card. If you're confident you can get it to trigger, then take it, but if you're just starting out, then avoid it. It's too complicated. Twilight is a bit of a noob trap. Technically, it's a scaling card. It's tied to the amount of times you've played a hand, specifically. So if you've already focused in on a specific way, it can be good, but we'll put it with these guys because potentially you can get more than 15. But if you've played a hand more than 15 times, then you're kind of set in your ways. You've already decided which direction you want to go. Mime. Just good. If there's a card in hand that triggers an effect, it triggers it twice. So things like gold cards, steel cards, blue seals. It can have its uses. It can be powerful, but you need to really have other components to get the best of it. Now, gold ticket, you've got to play a gold card and you get more gold from it than you would if you left it in hand. So it's a utility card. It's an economy card. It's just okayish though. On the high end of just okayish. So, this Joker, I forget the name of, Astronomer. Essentially, when you use it, you get free planets and free planet packs. So it's just good. Usually you'd take it, use it a couple of times, and then sell it on for something better. So in a roundabout way, it's an Eco Joker. To the moon. Is that to the moon? No. The rocket ship's to the moon. Well, this one's a good economy Joker because it doubles the amount of interest you get. So if you have the right components, then it can get really big. But if you've got over 25 gold, this is going to give you 10 gold a round, or 10 gold a turn. So it's worth picking up if you don't have economy Jokers. Now we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel here. So all of these guys are going to be only good before ante 5. without going into too much detail, one of them gives you extra chips, one of them gives you a flat mult. So for example, there's flushes, there's straights, then there's 4 of a kind, 2 pair, 1 pair, 3 of a kind. I don't think there's 4 of a kind version of it actually. But all these they're good to begin with. I'd all categorize them in the same vein. There's not one of them that's better than the other. Maybe the mult for a pair, but that's only because it's got more chance to trigger. Now, abstract. I'd say it's just good. I mean, every time you open a pack, you've got a 1 in 4 chance, or 1 in 2 in chance of getting a tarot card. So 3 tarot cards are good at the start. Later on, it might not be as powerful, so it deserves more recognition than only good before ante 5 level. So that's why I'm going to leave it at the bottom there. There's a blue joker, I think it's called. It's just okayish. It gives you chips based on the deck size. The bigger your deck, the more chips you'll get. So, you know, it's kind of like the opposite of erosion, but it only gives you chips, so it's not as good. Seance, avoid it because it's tricky and difficult to play with. Marble joker, no, because you're gonna get your deck clogged up with stone cards and nobody wants that. I mean, it can work, but it just overwhelms way too quickly in my opinion. 8 ball. Whenever you're playing 8, you've got a chance of getting a free tarot card. I put it only good before ante 5. Okay. No, we'll put it in just good next to there because it's just more ways to get tarot cards. Mystic Summit, okayish. When you've got no discards left, you get plus 15 mult. If you've got to the point where you've got no discards left, then you usually want to be winning the game. So it can be good, but the opportunity cost is too much. So I'll just put it there under walkie-talkie. Right, this one you get 2 mults if you have a club and another thing in your deck. It's just okayish, it's not amazing, because the effect is good, but it's hard to trigger. And finally, those 2, I forget which one Yorick does. But you know what? We're near the end here, so let's just put them up the top. I'm sure it'll be good. Let's put Triple A at the top there as well. Generally speaking, the legendaries are mostly good to get. So there you have it. That is all of the jokers ranked. If you've got this far in the video, let me know if you've made any mistake, or if I've made any mistakes in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because we're only at 63 subscribers at the minute, but everyone that subscribes, you'll be helping the channel out, and that will mean a lot to me as well. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Bye.